Okay, this lecture is over Module 16 from your curriculum entitled Troubleshoot Static and Default Routes. So we'll start out with why should I take this module? And basically it is to learn troubleshooting, which is a very important skill for a network engineer or an IT person to have. And of course, based on the title of this, we'll be talking primarily about routes. So what will you learn in this module? We'll talk about static routes and how packets are processed using static routes. And then we'll talk about default routes. And then we'll talk about how to troubleshoot static and default route configuration on our routers. So basically here we're talking about static routes and packeting forwarding. Unfortunately, it would be nice if they showed the routing tables on router 1, 2, and 3, but they do not. But instead they talk about it down here. So basically what happens is PC 1 is going to try to talk to PC3. So it sends a packet out, it goes through the switch, and it goes to the first router. So as it says down here, it arrives on gig 0/0/0. Now, I assume they meant to show the routing tables, but they're making a statement here that router 1 does not have a route to the destination network, which is over here 192.168.2-0/24. So it's going to use a default static route. So router 1 is going to create a new frame that is going to go over the default route, which is from router 1 to router 2. Okay, once the packet arrives at router 2, it's going to go through, the frame is forwarded out the serial connection, and it comes in on serial 010 on router 2. Router 2 is going to go through and it says forward the packet out serial 0/1/1. So either most likely, since there are multiple connections to this router, it has a route in the routing table. So it's going to send it down to router 3, and router 3 is going to look at it. It's going to de-encapsulate the frame so that it can look at its destination IP, and it is going to know about 192.168.2.0 because it is a directly connected network to router 3, so it will know to send it out gig 0/0/0, and then once it does that, it will go through the switch and will finally make it to the destination, which is PC3. So that's just talking about packet forwarding, routing tables, encapsulating it, things we've talked about previously. So this is a really short section. So 16.1.2 is a check your understanding to make sure you understand those concepts that we just talked about. 16.2.1 talks about network changes. Basically, what it boils down to is when the network topology occurs, either adding devices or devices failing or links failing, connectivity may be lost. And when connectivity is lost, you start getting complaints, and you need to feel comfortable with troubleshooting these. So routers operate at layer 3, which is the IP, the Internet Protocol layer. Here's some of the tools that we might use to troubleshoot problems in our topology. So we'll scroll down here and talk about them individually. So oftentimes when we want to know if something works, we use the ping command. So basically what's going to happen is we are on PC1 and we're going to try to ping PC3. And in this case, it shows 100% success. So that means our packet was able to go all the way from router 1 all the way to PC3. So it looks like things are working well. As far as trace route, again, it shows we're on router 1 from the prompt. We do a trace route to 2.1, which is this PC. It goes through router 2 and router 3 and makes it to its destination. Now on the device itself, on the router, we can do a show IP route and look at the routes that are actually entered into the routing table and make sure that they make sense based upon the topology. We can do a show IP interface brief, which is going to show all the interfaces and whether they're up or down and whether or not they have IP addresses configured. So you can look and make sure all the links that you think should be up are up, and if they should have an IP, do they actually have an IP address. And then we haven't talked about it in a while, but show CDP neighbors is going to show all the devices that are connected and information about those devices, including what type of device they are. So those are some of the commands that we can use to troubleshoot. Now, those were when everything was working fine. So 16.2.3 is entitled Solve a Connectivity Problem. So now we're looking at a situation where PC1 cannot ping anything over in this LAN, the 192.168.2.0 LAN. I would assume, based on the topology, the device is trying to ping is PC3. So a lot of times what you do is you want to know whether it works or not. So you're going to ping from your device or a device over here to a device over here. And if everything works like it did in the previous section, then our network works good. But what happens down here is we see that the success rate is 0. We got periods when packets were sent, which means we received no response, as opposed to the exclamation marks that we saw before, which do indicate success. So when this happens, then we start working through here. So what we're going to do is ping the next hop router. So from router 1, can we ping router 2? And as we see down here, we get a success rate of 100. So then what happens is from router 1, can we ping through router 3 to PC3? And in this case, we can. So it looks like packets are going through and making it all the way to PC3. So what we do is we get on router 2, and it says verify the router 2 routing tables. So the problem that we have is that packets coming back from the 2.0 network, they'll go to router 2 and then they'll be sent back to router 3 instead of going to router 1. So that's one thing that you may or may not experienced in Cisco 1 or Cisco 2 is you can ping one way but not the other. Or in this case, the packet makes it here, and when it comes back, then it gets routed incorrectly. So that being the case, we would go in and configure the route correctly to go to the correct IP. So first we're going to delete the incorrect route that goes from router 2 to router 3, and then on router 2 we're going to add the correct route. And then to verify that it's installed, basically we're going to use show IP route to make sure everything's okay. I kind of call it, say if you're a paranoid person because you deleted one route, added the other route, there's really no reason if you didn't get an error message that verifying the route shouldn't be the way you configured it. And then finally, we're going to ping PC3, and now we get 100% success rate, so that indicates that we have indeed fixed the problem. So 1642 is a syntax checker on some of the commands we just talked about. You can do that on your own. And this is a really short module because we're moving on to the module practice and quiz. 1631 is a packet tracer on troubleshooting static and default routes. I will be assigning that, so watch for that to appear in Blackboard. Down here we have a lab. Basically this is troubleshoot static and default routes. However, the title down here is Troubleshoot IP version 4 and IP version 6 static routes, but this is basically similar to 1631. So I probably won't be assigning this unless for some reason I decide that I would like you to do it on the NetLab. In that case, it'll appear in Blackboard. So what did you learn in this module? You can read over this, make sure you understand the things we talked about. Again, this is a rather short module. And then 1634 is the module quiz, which you can do on your own. And that finishes up the lecture for module 16.